Hi, thanks for joining us for Parent Chat today. My name's Connie Gross, and I'm an early childhood mental health consultant for the Children's Resource Center in Bowling Green, Ohio. Today, we're going to talk about how you can help your child worry less and cope with change. So, the first strategy we're going to talk about today is a visual schedule. A visual schedule just outlines the general order of the day. And that can be really helpful because most decisions about what will be accomplished in a day are decided by the grown-ups. And so children don't really know what the day holds or how long activities might be, or even when they're going to get to do some of the things they look forward to. You can see the example on the screen. So this parent just made a visual schedule that they hung on their fridge. And they divided the schedule into morning, afternoon, and evening, which can be really nice because having just the whole day schedule might be a bit overwhelming. They also didn't necessarily tie times to those activities. And that works out perfectly because children generally don't worry so much about the minute and how long an activity will take. And their reference for time might be a bit different than the adults depending on their age. But it just gives them a general flow of first we're going to do this. And when we're done with that, here's the next thing we're going to do. The other nice thing about the way this parent did the schedule is that those cards can be switched out. So maybe this is a schedule for Monday through Friday and it includes school or childcare. But on the weekends, it might be switched out with visiting grandma or going to pick strawberries or some other activity that your family does together. The next strategy that can help reduce children's worry is routines. A routine is doing something the same way each time. And in doing that, it makes that activity more predictable. So, for example, this screen shows a bedtime routine. And a bedtime routine might be something that was on your visual schedule, like bedtime, it might say, for example. But we know that bedtime has kind of a lot of components, a lot of things that have to happen before we actually get those kiddos into the bed. And so a routine is doing it the same way every night. So, for example, the one shown on the screen, maybe it includes taking a bath, brushing their teeth, putting on pajamas, brushing their hair, using the potty, and then they get into bed. Every night we would do the same process. And so in that way, it becomes routine and children know what to expect. They know that when they get out of the bathtub, they're going to brush their teeth and then they're going to go put their pajamas on. In the beginning, a routine takes time to build. That's why a visual can be really helpful. But as your child learns that routine, it will become something that they're able to just do a bit automatically because they know what comes next and it's predictable. This can help children because when things are predictable, it feels safe. And I don't know about you, but bedtime has been something in my home that children struggle with at times. You might have other routines, though, like getting up in the morning or the way you get ready for a bath or whatever the situation might be. So, a routine is just doing it the same way each time. Even when you've done those things, like making a visual schedule and building routines in, your child might still feel anxious at times. Part of that is because we can't plan for everything. Life happens, and sometimes situations come up that we're not prepared for, and those can lead to some anxious feelings. So, I want to share with you some strategies to help your child cope with those feelings as they come. The first one is about teaching deep breathing. If you've watched some of our other parent chat videos, you've probably already learned some ways to teach deep breathing. So we're just going to touch on it briefly here. Teaching deep breathing is a skill that we need to teach while our children are calm, because when they're upset and feeling anxious, that's not a great time to learn a new skill. So this is something we might practice throughout the day. It's a really calming activity, and so it's a good activity to build into that bedtime routine, but could be done anytime, honestly. This visual talks about smelling the flower and blowing on the pinwheel. Really the idea of taking a deep breath in and then blowing out longer than you breathed in. You could use a visual to teach this. You could use some actual manipulative activities to teach this, like using a pinwheel. You can often buy them at the dollar store, or there are ways to make a pinwheel online. You could save an empty bubble wand and blow pretend bubbles. You could teach them using a video like Elmo's belly breathing, which is a YouTube video that has a really cute rap about Elmo getting upset and turning into a monster. And then he takes some belly breaths and calms down and kind of turns back to himself. You could teach belly breathing just by having your kiddo put their hand or a stuffed animal on their belly and breathing so big that it moves that object. We want to practice this frequently so that when our children are upset, they're better able to take deep breaths on their own. And then when they're upset, modeling deep breathing by taking deep breaths yourself is the number one thing you can do to help them calm, but then also prompting them to breathe with you. The other thing you can do to help your kiddo kind of manage some of those anxious feelings is allow some time and space for them to talk about their feelings. Dr. Becky Bailey says you have to name it to tame it. And so that is the idea that, it's hard to control how we feel and keep our actions under control when we can't even label how we're feeling. And so we want to use a lot of emotion language around our children, not just when they're upset, but all the time, labeling our emotions and theirs. A great way to do this is to have emotion visuals at home. And if you want to email me, I'd be happy to send you some free emotion visuals. You can print or pull up on your phone. But having an emotion visual helps your child identify feelings for themselves, identify feelings in others. Being able to identify feelings in others is a great skill for empathy as well. But it will also allow them the opportunity to talk about their feelings and you the opportunity to understand what some of their struggles are and then maybe help them cope with those by prompting that deep breathing and talking about what you're going to do next, trying to build that visual schedule back in. And remember that once we leave school, then we're going to go home and have dinner. So helping them kind of come back into control of their feelings and actions. There are maybe some times of day, though, that in general cause a bit more anxiety than others. And oftentimes those are around transitions, either when we're switching from one activity to another or from one caregiver to another. And so I just wanted to talk really briefly about how we can help children transition feeling less stress. So the first one is to give choices when you're able. Like we talked about already, children don't get to make a lot of decisions throughout the day. It's mostly their adult caregivers. And that's as it should be, because our job is to keep them safe and healthy. But there are times where we can give children choices that can help them feel in control. And for all of us, when we feel more in control, it's less scary. So doing something like saying, it's time to go. Should we walk like a turtle or gallop like a horse to the car? We're basically saying to our kiddo that we do have to leave and we're going to the car, but there's an option of how we could get there. This empowers your child to make a decision and feel like they have some control over going to the car. The second thing there is to consider using goodbye rituals. These can help in transitioning from one caregiver to another. This is just a way of saying goodbye that makes things predictable. They know that when you do your special handshake or your 3 kisses on the nose or whatever your transition ritual is, that means you're leaving, but that you will be back. And another tip for this is to just think about how you can make your goodbye as short as possible. Oftentimes it's hard to leave our children when they're feeling distressed, but stringing it out and making it take longer oftentimes just strings out the emotional toll that saying goodbye has. So thinking about a way you could do a ritual, having a predictable way of saying goodbye and letting them know you'll be back or when they'll see you again, helps with them being able to kind of move on from that saying goodbye sadness and into the next activity they're going to do. And hopefully you can trust the caregiver that you're leaving your child with to help them calm and get regulated again. If that's something you're concerned about, there are parent chat videos to help with kiddos who are upset, and maybe suggesting one of your caregivers watch one of those might help with some ideas about how to help calm your child. Here are some of the resources that we talked about today. The top one is my email address, connieg@crcwoodcounty.org. If you would like some resources about any of the things we talked about today, or just any early childhood mental health resources, feel free to email me and I'll do my best to get you some things. There's also a list of resources here where you can find information and activities to do with your children regarding today's topic. Thanks for joining us, and please check out our other videos so that you can find some things to help meet your child's social emotional needs.